So we know across Europe, a lot of countries have issued advice to their citizens to have a stockpile of food, take for example, for a few weeks, or have money. In this case, in Ireland, they've issued pretty much the say to people to have always have money at the house. Even though a few years ago, the government was saying to you, don't have money, you don't have cash at your house. Particularly older people used to carry cash and leave it under their mattresses, etc. And particularly being a Cavan person, we have all our money. We don't trust the banks, and we're right not to trust them. But long story short, Cavan people don't trust technology, and technology can go astray. Many things can go offline, cyber attacks, etc., etc. So the government's advice is to keep €600 in your house to last you a week or so. That's the issue. The pretty much the department. It's only advisory now. It's not mandatory. The government are not going to come around to make sure you have 600. But it's very ironic, particularly the government are pushing this cashless agenda. They want to get rid of cash. Thankfully, they've put it into law. But a lot of the government agencies were pushing hard to get rid of cash altogether. And now they're saying have cash at your house. It's very peculiar. It's like cash is king, Funny enough, cash is king. Even though they're trying to have this digital agenda, the European Union too is pushing a digital EU agenda to have no such thing as paper money or digital, so they can find out what you spent your money on. 1984. But it's funny how the government are saying to keep €600 at your house, but anyway, because the whole system, the thing with cash is it's king. There's no such thing as technical glitches. Cash in hand, there you go. Without receipts and all that. Here's the cash. With bank cards and stuff, you have to tap, you have to put in your pins. There's no such thing with cash. You just hand it there and you're done. And the government won't know what you spent your money on. So it's always great to have it. But what I'm trying to say, take for example in Sweden, they've said about keeping a stockpile of food, etc., provisions, light torches, etc., batteries, a radio, other stuff. Other countries around Europe have a long list. Take for example, Finland has a huge list. It's always had a huge list of stuff. Like just to go through, we'd be here for a week. But the recommendation is generally to have about a week or two supply of food, canned food, things that won't go off. Now, obviously, the Department of Defence and the government here have only pretty much said about pretty much worried about cyber attacks because this country only has a pretzel holding up its whole electricity grid, etc., etc. Because we're not advanced enough. We're too backwards in terms of security. We're just kind of here. We don't have no security. There's no such thing as security against cyber attacks, anything like that. Or God forbid if the electricity grid just did fail, because you have to remember half of Holland's electricity grid is used to power foreign companies, etc., etc., Apple, etc., big data centers, huge big data centers is using up half of and we're talking about the environment and all that, it's using up half the power of the whole country put together. One data center alone is nearly using up the whole power of the whole entire country. It's absolutely insane. Like, they're massive data centers, may I say, just using up the whole electricity grid, and we say about the environment, etc. But yeah, so the government's advice is to keep €600, and I would go further than that. Obviously, the Department of Defence have not really gone any further than that. The government, may I say too, have not said keep a stockpile of food. But I do recommend. I'm not trying to fearmonger and stuff. But even if something like typical step of storms, we've seen recently, for storms, electricity have went out in different places for a long time. Some places for weeks. In Mayo and different parts of Galway and some islands off the coast too. They'll go weeks without electricity, etc. So it's always important, in my opinion. I'm only saying this advisory to people. I'm not saying you should do it. It's up to you. But I would always say it's important to keep a small bit of cash. I always have myself. I always kept a bit of cash on me. I'm a cash man. Calvin people are full of money, just to say too. But long story short, I always use cash. Whether I went to Finland recently, I always use cash and never really use my card unless I really, really have to. Because I don't want the government or the bank telling me where I'm going, where I'm spending my money. I don't want them to know. It's none of their business. And cash is king. It was that. It's no hassle putting in pins or that. It's you pay for it, you're done. But also the other thing I say too is to keep a stockpile of food, non-provisions that won't go off, canned food particularly, like a week or two. I know it's hard; it's a lot of money in this country to buy anything at this moment. But I would always say to keep at least a week's stockpile. Say for example, if, God forbid, a flood or something like that happened, it's always good to have. And I would say the most important thing too is a radio, just to find out if something did happen, like a storm, etc. What's the news in your local area? Even though the mainstream media is not much different, but just to have to know. Like, take for example, when the storm came in February here, Storm one, we had no power. The phone signal went dead. My phone signal, there was no phone signal for anybody. Nobody could call anybody. The system around this area of Cavan was handing notes. That's how the news went around. We were handing notes, quite literally, because there was no internet, there was no electricity, there was nothing. But people had to go around just handing out notes, etc., etc. Because we had no way of communicating with anybody. Because the whole phone network went down, etc. So nobody could call for help if something happened, etc. So it's important to have a radio, so at least you can know what's going on. And the other thing too is the lights, torches, or even lights with battery lights to have in your house. It's very important. Um, so it is important. I do recommend you to do it. Obviously, the government haven't went that far, but I do think it's important to keep a small amount of cash. But I do think it's ironic too, just to say, because they've pushed hard, and particularly the European Union. We see at the moment with the EU digital currency, what they're trying to do, and obviously I won't use it regardless of what they say. If they criminalise it, I simply won't use it. I don't trust the European Union with my money. I couldn't trust them giving my money. I wouldn't give them the money. First of all, the Irish government is stupid to give them so much money. Because we're basically being fleeced by the European Union. We're giving them hundreds of billions a year, and they're giving us nothing in return. And they just flood. They are able to control our borders, etc., etc. It's utterly ridiculous, if you ask me. But I do think it's important that you do keep a small bit of cash. And I know it's, and again, this is the thing. The government a few years ago, I remember them saying with older people to put the money in the bank. That was what was said by many ministers and stuff. The older people shouldn't have money in the house. Because there was one incident, just take for example down the country. I remember it was I think it was in Clare. Yeah, there was an old person. They must have had 100,000 or something in the house, and I think half of it was taken by burglars and stuff. It can happen, but I do say put it somewhere safe. Put it somewhere safe. Have about 600 or so. I know for some people that's a lot of money, but any kind of money, just even put something aside. It's always good just to have an emergency. Because again, someday they will, and unfortunately, this is just a reality. As somebody that knows his stuff in terms of defence and the capabilities of this country to defend itself, to put it bluntly, the situation at the moment we couldn't defend eggs. Let's put that way, and that's put in a nice way, because there's no such thing as cyber security in this country. This country is basically open to attack from cyber security. Like basically, the whole networks can be taken down very easily. There's nothing to really stop anybody who knew what they were doing to take down any foreign state or anything. We're not advanced enough. We're not like MI6 or anything. We've no technologies, no understanding pretty much of it. So it's important just to keep that in mind. That's the major concern for me, because everything will just go down. The internet's no good when there's no power and when the systems go down. As we've seen in Storm Ever, it was no good. All this online banking and all that was no good. It went all out the window. But that's why cash is king. Because cash, you don't need any internet. You just pay and Bob's your uncle. But anyway, let me know what you think. But I do encourage people to be wary of that. It's only recommendations, it's not the law or anything. And I don't think we should make it law. There's no perceivable danger at the moment. I would say the cash thing, even just having a bit of food and stuff, there's no perceivable danger of Ireland being in any conflict or anything. I don't foresee it at the moment. It's obviously cyber attacks. That's a major concern for me. It's cyber attacks, the attacks in the energy grid and stuff. That's what I'm worried about more than and storms too can happen, of course, but not to a certain extent as bad as how much we rely on technology and the internet, etc. So let me know what you think. Subscribe for more, and bye.